Salve, gente minha. Acompanha as legendas? Hey, hello there. This is Dr. Riecken, Claudia from Brazil, QuantumHouse. I'm very honored to present the interview with Lisa A. Romano, a master sister that's working from New York and online for many years, helping thousands, maybe millions of people to learn to be self aware, to have a higher self and love the self in order to acknowledge their needs and to be able to healthy relationships. This is my field of graduation, but it's mostly QuantumHouse gift. QuantumHouse is a feeling, is an environment. You have a house for your own to growth, capacitation, understanding. And Lisa, as you're going to see in the next few blocks of conversation we made here, is a wise woman, a very prepared writer with many best-selling books, and a hearted person that teaches by example. Also, she's funny. We can't lose the phrases and stuff like the rabbit hole and playing with ideas in a way that she gives example of how can we just, you know, protect the space of the self, the space of the heart. So I'm very thankful for Lisa, as you're going to see in this interview, for the past decade, raising my kids and stuff. And we help people doing that for themselves. You have the chance here in quantumhouse.com to see the ideas, the life, and the lessons of Lisa A. Romano exclusively to Brazil and our Brazilian publics. Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you very much, you guys. Enjoy it. Let's do it. Lisa A. Romano, you're so requested in my channel and everything. We have here Lisa A. Romano, the master, the coach, the life coach of breakthrough. I would like to listen to you directly and more. Welcome you very much. Brazil is a huge country, many people interested in self-knowledge, in changing, in spirituality, and in self-love. Of QuantumHouse, our work about self-love, resiliency, entrepreneurship, and healthy relationships. So you are a writer and a life coach. I just got to know some dozens of students and clients and followers of yours. They all love you as I do. And so, first of all, again, thank you, Lisa, my respect, and thank you for a lifetime for everything you do for your life and so.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Claudia.
I will begin as a mother because I went after you because of kids issue in my house, and I wouldn't believe or I wouldn't imagine how many other things I would discover after so many years in the field of neuroscience and you know, entrepreneurship. But I'd like instead begin about you. What's your lifestyle today? What was the road from childhood until the road back to me, which was the first book? And then now, what is like Lisa now? What is today? Your husband, your kids, your lifestyle, what's important in life today? And I do ask this, and I would love you to share that with us because it's inspiring to know that we get in another place and we can choose a style of life around which we build the career, not the opposite. You don't build your lifestyle around a career. You build your career a lot around your lifestyle. So, Lisa Romano, you are in New York, right?
Yes, I'm in New York. Yep. And so, to begin, I came from a home where my parents were unrecovered adult children of alcoholics. So they had no concept of self-knowledge. They had no concept of self. They were living through the emotional brain.
Both of them?
Both of them. They're both adult children of alcoholics. That's why they attracted them.
Their parents were alcoholics. All right. Not your father.
Well, I don't know if I have the right to call him an alcoholic, but I would say he had addictive problems. He was a gambler. He drank. I don't think that I could diagnose him with alcoholism, but I would say that they were more dry alcoholics in that they were in denial of their issues, of their pain. they lived outside of themselves, thinking that they could control their emotions or ignore their emotions by controlling everything outside of them. So if that included marijuana, if that included gambling, if that included raging, if that included excessive cleaning or workaholism, that's all these isms. That's how they handled these emotions that they did not know how to think through. They had an emotional experience, and then they sought to control it some way or to deny it, right? By raging or working, like I said, or gambling, or codependency. And so they were both very immature people. My mom was 19, my dad was 20 or 21 when they had me. And they were both very, very wounded people. They were very reactive people. And then I come along with all of these needs as a child, as a newborn. They weren't equipped. They just weren't equipped. And so I was born to people who couldn't see themselves. And they thought that, oh, if I do X, Y, and Z, my life should just work. Sort of like a 3-year-old. You know, if I don't cause any trouble, then I should feel loved and everything should just work. They were very childlike in their thinking. So when my mother had me, she thought, I'll take care of the house, I'll have a baby, I'll feed the baby, I won't drink like my mother did. It should be easy. It's never easy when you're not processing your emotions from a higher state of consciousness. Life is always difficult. Even if you have money in the bank and you have a husband and your kids are, you know, they're healthy, it's still not easy because you're not managing your emotions.
If you wouldn't drink as her mother and feed the baby, everything was going to be all right. But that was not it, because she was not connected. She was not aware of herself.
She had so many wounds from childhood. She had an alcoholic mother, an alcoholic father. There was domestic violence. There was trauma, CPTSD, shame. Being the child of 2 alcoholics, feeling dirty all the time. They never had clean clothes. They weren't fed. No one showed up, picked them up after school. My mother had tremendous shame, but she thought that I just won't drink. And then my life will be easy, because in her head, alcohol was the problem. No, it wasn't alcohol. It was the abuse of alcohol that was the problem, because my grandmother had problems that she wasn't recognizing. And so my mother thinks, oh, I'll have a baby, I'll get married, I'll take care of him, I'll take care of the house. It should be easy because I'm not going to drink. And nothing could have been further from the truth. So my mother had wounds from her mother, and she just transferred them down to me. It was very difficult to connect. I never connected with my mother. The most I connected to her was when she was dying from dementia, or dying while having dementia. Suddenly the aggression lowered. She wasn't so angry, you know? And she was easier to be around. The dementia just took away. I don't know if it was the trauma lens, but something dropped. She was able to just be more present with me through the dementia. It was very interesting. But I grew up feeling invisible, right? And I grew up feeling left out and abandoned. I don't think that I ever developed this safety net of ego boundaries. So I didn't know who I was. I had no ego, right? And so I didn't know who is Lisa, and whoever I thought I was shame-based. I wasn't good enough. And so I grew up feeling invisible, and then I ended up marrying someone who mirrored the energy of a good mix of mom and dad, who withheld his love, who put me down rather than boosted me up. It felt like an adversarial relationship. So that's what we do. So we have this resonance within us as children, and we've been attuned to our environments, and that tunes us up with a particular frequency. And that is what we end up feeling most attracted to in our adulthood. So it was confusing until I figured it out, that I was resonating with this relationship because it was so familiar. Feeling unseen and invisible was my norm. Wanting to be loved, chasing love, passive aggressiveness from the other person, being shamed by the other person. That was my norm. And so that's the relationship I manifested. And about 10 years, maybe even sooner, I would say 6 or 7 years into the relationship, my body started to break down. with asthma and migraine headaches. And it just got so bad after about 12 years, I was afraid I was going to die. An allergist that was treating me for asthma said, you better listen to your body because your body is listening to you. And I thought, what? And it was in that moment that I realized I should be listening to myself, because no one ever taught me that what was going on inside of me was important. I was always told that what's going on inside of me was stupid, being overdramatic. It was irrational. So I was stuck inside my head thinking, whatever I feel, I shouldn't be feeling. I was thrashing against it. And so I had cortisol, right, flooding my system. I had inflammation flooding my system. And I was developing autoimmune diseases like asthma. And I thought, something has to change. And that's when I said, what's really going on? I was so unhappy in my marriage, Claudia, but I didn't think I had a right to be that unhappy. Because my ex-husband used to say, you shouldn't be unhappy. You have no right to be unhappy. You should be happy. And I would think, maybe he's right. I should be happy, but I'm not happy. And then I would go talk to my mom and my dad, and they would say, you should be happy. There's something wrong with you because you're not happy. And it really forced me into isolation and like just trying to push through it and ignore how I felt. But one day, my ex-husband had a fight with my son. He was about 11 years old. And I thought, I'm done. I'm done. You have to leave, because our house is falling apart. And if you're fighting with him at 11, what's it going to be like when he's 15 or 16? It was just getting worse and worse and worse. And so I asked him to leave, and that started the divorce process. It took a long time. But fast forward through all of my work, falling on my face over and over, attracting the same relationship over and over, and finally asking myself, what are you doing wrong? And what I was doing wrong was I was ignoring myself. I was ignoring my red flags. I was ignoring my intuition. When I met a man, I knew he was wrong for me, but I would talk myself out of it. And I finally got to the point where I said, well, what would happen in my life if I stopped talking myself out of it? And it was in a very short amount of time that I met and manifested my husband, Anthony. And now we're in a healthy relationship. My lifestyle is I go to bed early, very early. I wake up early. I read, I meditate, I journal, I work from home these days due to COVID. I got rid of my satellite office. And I built a lifestyle brand, a lifestyle business. I built a business around my mission, which is to help awaken people to the ability to love oneself, hear oneself, become integrated, and honor oneself. So I feel like I've hit the lottery, because I finally see myself, which is what all of us need to do, is we need to see and hear and honor ourselves and be ourselves unapologetically. Don't apologize for being you, just be you.
You said you have 3 kids, right? Do they live with you? Are they already married out? I've just been pacing you, but I'm not really sure who is where. What about your kids and Anthony that I met in New York with you? Is he working with the same thing? How is the family dynamics nowadays?
Well, my husband has 3 daughters. And I have 3 children, so we're a blended family. We only have 1 child living with us now. That's my youngest. She's 23. My son lives on his own. My middle daughter is married. His one daughter is married. His oldest is married. His second is living alone. She bought a beautiful home. And his youngest is also engaged, about to be married, and lives separately. So we only have 1 child living at home. Anthony and I never pushed relationships with their children, ever. He and I came together, and I saw myself, I took a back seat to his children when they were around. I made sure that his children knew that I knew those were his kids, and his relationship with them has to be important, very, very important. Number 1 even, right? And Anthony never tried to push himself on my children. He understood that I'm a mother and my children come first. And he understood their place in my life. So we have very beautifully been able to appreciate that. I know that he's a dad and he loves his daughters. And he knows that I'm a mom and I love my kids. And we have been able to build a relationship in addition, in honor of the relationships that each of us has with our own children, which has allowed for us to integrate our children without pushing them. His children never felt like he was choosing me over them, and my children never felt like I was choosing him over them. He wanted my children to know that he appreciated my relationship with them. And I wanted his children to know, I appreciate that's your daddy, and you love him, and you have to feel first in his life. I'm going to be his wife, and I'll be your friend. And if you need me, I'm here. And the same thing, Anthony took the place as, I love your mother, I'm going to honor her, and I'll be your friend. And so there was never a push for us to feel like our 6 kids had to get along. Everybody understood that he and I loved one another, but they also understood that our children were very important factors in our life. You know, sometimes when you meet someone who has children, you might want to, you know, I've seen my clients struggle with, well, I want his kids to know that I'm the wife in his life. Yeah, okay. And I've had male clients who are like, well, I want her kids to know that I'm the boss in this house. That's a lot of ego. That's going to be difficult to navigate, you know, because the relationship that a child has with their parents is sacred. And he could get another wife, and she could get another husband. She's never going to get
Other
a
kids
different
and
kid.
parents, yeah.
So that has to be honored.
Well, I've heard once you, many years ago, interviewed Anthony, and throughout your videos and stuff, you know, I've been studying like a post-graduation. I went into this to help my daughter, and I was already helping through resiliency and CPTSD and stuff people. But your spiritual path and this simple and funny way, because you're so funny, we laugh a lot with you, your faces and stuff. And I usually say, well, it's not about think positive. Because if you think positive, but you know, just rationalize the stuff about seeing the self, it's not only not enough, but it becomes a lie, it becomes a facade, it becomes, well, I know now I think positive, I see myself, but it's not true. So you and Anthony shall be really aware, because if you're not able to have that kind of boundary with the kids of the other one and the other upside as well. So you two gotta see your own selves and your choices very well in a marriage of remarriage, actually, because this is another composition of family. So it's like I say 1 + 1 = 1. One person entire, another person entire equals one couple entire. But you gotta be entire. You think but you said he's not in a spiritual path, and he doesn't have to be. And I laughed about that because I said, yeah, we do, you know, how can you be the therapist of your husband and you're going to lose everything? As a woman, you might have the right to be the woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was it? You attracted this energy because you were, now what is this in that came or became the road back to me, the book Road Back to Me? What is this that you did?
For me, well, you know, I kind of like reverse engineered, right? So in other words, like when I realized that I was so messed up, when I was so codependent, right? And I realized, oh my God, it's me, you know, like no wonder my relationships aren't working, you know, like I do feel like it's my job to make other people happy, and I feel defeated when I can't do that. You know, I am fawning, you know, I am chasing approval. So I am, in a way, trying to fix myself in the fixing of other people. You know, and is it about me or is it about that other person? It feels like it's about that other person. But if I'm rescuing you and I'm codependent, I'm actually hoping that you can rescue me from my shame and my abandonment. So when I kept thinking about these concepts, you know, I dug into child psychology and realized, I did a side-by-side comparison. Like, I did not grow up in a healthy home. I did not feel seen. I did not feel valued. And so if I was a cell and I was put in a petri dish that was
A petri dish?
abrasive, yeah, like a cell, you know, in a lab, right? You put a cell in a dish and you look at it under a microscope. So whatever the culture medium is, right? If it was acid, then the cell that I am would be destroyed. But if I was
you
put
can't
inside
help
a
it. It's
dish,
just like an environment that's not about you. It's your programming. By the way, I never took this off since New York.
Love it.
Yeah, it's not
Thank you, Claudia.
very chic for important dinners and stuff, but who cares?
Not you, it's your programming.
Yeah.
But if we take one child and we take that child and we put that child into a loving, nurturing home, always, that child has a much greater chance at loving the self and developing mature adult relationships than a child that is born to an alcoholic home or an abrasive home, right? So it wasn't me, it was my environment that changed me, right? And so then I thought, well, it's me, I have codependency. Well, what is codependency? Codependency is living below the veil. It's living through the emotional brain, not the thinking brain, and certainly not the higher mind. So I was reactive. So I thought, okay, so I'm below the veil of consciousness. So then if I'm below the veil of consciousness, how do I fix that? I'm always looking, well, how do I fix it? I have to become more conscious. Well, how does one become more conscious? Learn, expand, self-knowledge. And so I committed myself to understanding my childhood, my parents. I constructed a history. And then the codependent woman that I was made sense. It could have been no other way that I was the way I was. And I had so much self-compassion for the little girl that was born to this mother and this father. And eventually I even had compassion for my mother and father. But first I had to have compassion for myself. And so if you ask me, who am I today? I'm non-attached. I know that I'm a part of everything, but I'm attached to nothing. In other words, like, I know that I'm a part of everything, but I know that attaching to anything, an emotion, an experience, a memory, a person, everything's transient. So if I can learn to be myself and I can organize my mind so I'm thinking in a healthy way versus a destructive way, not a reactive way. So I have to notice what I notice.
You are into healthy bounds. That's not like to be indifferent to real life or to goals or to business or to marriage, love and sex and kids and family and friends and everything. So it's not that you belong to nothing in a way that you are indifferent like schizoids or narcissists do. Could you please explain that? Because when you come and say, well, there was an environment and that cell was just like suffocated into that. There was no way out but to be programmed into that dynamics. When I noticed that, I said, well, this is an emotional self. There is a higher self here and a higher self, which comes with consciousness and spirituality for me to see all this. So my question for you to keep telling me, well, this is not to become indifferent, but to discern, to differentiate yourself, and emotionally, not only rationally, because otherwise it's a lie. To what extent that change is for good, is true? I mean, as dysfunctional original families with this inner programming, to what extent we do change?
I think we have to recognize that we can never not change. In other words, like, this isn't this isn't an event. You know, life is going to throw things at you. You have to develop resiliency. You have to be able to ebb and flow with what shows up, right? And so I know I can never let my guard down and not practice thinking in a healthy way. And so part of thinking in a healthy way is I have to know who I am. I have to know who I love. I have to know what I don't love. I have to know what I will tolerate and I won't tolerate. So I'm no longer in resistance to what's true for Lisa, right? And so now I accept who I am. And so now when I'm out and about, I don't expect anyone to be anything other than what they are. And I don't judge people for what they are. I accept them, right? And so because I know who I am, I can show up authentically. And then if I meet someone in my experience and we hit it off, that's a beautiful thing. I want to encourage that. If that person doesn't want to hang out with me, I accept that. I'm not vindictive. I accept it. I stay in a state of unconditional love for this person. I give this person the right to have their experience of me. That's not attached to the outside, but I'm very attached to myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And with, I would say, strong bounds to the healthy relations of yours, right?
Oh, yes. Anthony and I know what we will and will not tolerate.
And there is synchrony. How much is important in a couple to have common goals, Lisa? Is that just like it?
I don't think that's it. I think that a lot of people use the word love, but to me, that's an ambiguous word, because respect to me is like an adjective where it's, if you respect me, I feel it.
Yeah, that's true. It's a nominalization. Respect as a nominalization is not the same, right?
But when someone says, oh, I love you, plenty of people say I love you and they hurt you. But when someone says I respect you, you know immediately whether or not you have been respected or not respected or disrespected. So we definitely need respect. And in order to have a healthy relationship, you have to respect yourself, because you've got to be able to discern and honor whether or not this relationship is right for you. So you have to love yourself and you have to trust yourself. And when when you're in a relationship, you have to be able to respect and honor what you feel and what you discern, and to decide whether or not this relationship that you're fit. And so in terms of what would make a relationship fit, certainly if we have the same goals, we have the same beliefs, we have the same desires, we have the same intentions, all of that fits. But for instance, Anthony is not as spiritual as I am. There's a tremendous amount of respect for who I am. Mm-hmm. And I have respect for who he is. He doesn't try to change me.
That's beautiful.
To change him.
That's really beautiful, because you can love a different one. This is just anti-narcissism. Narcissists can only love the same. Even in homosexuality, there's a lot of diagnosed narcissism in my field, because it's like loving the same. And so these people need help to be able to love anybody of any color, of any way. But if you can love the difference, the other one who's different, you don't want to force them to be an extension of you, then you're loving somebody else. Then you're dealing with somebody else. That's interesting, to love somebody different. So different people attract each other, or similar people attract each other? In what way is that working?
Well, look, think about codependency and narcissism. The resonance is shame. The narcissist is most often shame-based, as is the codependent. So there's a resonancy in terms of the energy. Codependents are often very wounded in childhood, as are narcissists. How it manifests in the 3D world is different, where a codependent is now other-focused and a narcissist is self-focused. Two people, one relationship, two people worried about one person. I can tell you, I think in my own life, Anthony, I'm far more above the veil. I'm certainly not where I want to be. I want to keep striving. But I can tell you that I am more conscious of the idea that because Anthony and I are so similar, we attract one another. I would say the more conscious part of me, right, is aware that there are so many similarities between Anthony and I. But when I was unhealed, there were a lot of similarities between me and my ex as well. Childhood trauma, feeling invisible, and shame. And so I think that we tend to attract something within ourselves that may be unresolved when we're attracting. And isn't that the point? So if I attract a difficult relationship, if I ask myself, what is it I'm supposed to be learning? I may learn something about myself. Mm-hmm. And the spell can be broken. That's what happened to me, right? The last relationship that I had for Anthony, he was, in my opinion, a psychopath, mm-hmm. very intelligent. It only lasted a few months, but it really knocked the air out of me, because I thought, what am I still doing wrong?
Oh man,
yeah.
Done that, been there, I know.
What am I still doing wrong? And I thought, there's some resonance that I haven't cut the cord to. What is it? And when I stood in my higher mind and just asked the question, or my thinking mind, what did you do wrong this time? The answer came, you ignored red flags. And I went, that is true. So then I thought, next time I'm not ignoring any red flags.
You have to be bold enough in order to be authorized to say no. Because one of the problems I see in patients and in myself is that I saw yellow flags and couldn't say no exactly. That's too early. You don't know. Don't be perfectionist. Then I have a nickname for sociopaths or psychopaths that are cute. The covert narcissists, I call them cutopaths. They're cutopaths. Because isn't it fofopata in Portuguese? They're fofopatas, cutopaths. And it's hard. Many times we talked, and it's good nowadays to be able to say no, and that's okay, with no harm or no rage. Just no. Just that's not for me. So you go. To what extent do you think that change you're making is, as the question was put here, change the inner program? It's a daily thing, isn't it?
Yeah, because we're talking about neurological pathways, repetition, observation, and consistency. So if I have an emotion and then I pick up a belief and then I create a behavior, then there are neurological pathways associated with that behavior. And the emotional brain is impulsive, it's reactive, it's not thinking, it's automatic. And so the goal really is to find the stillness within so that my thinking brain, my neocortex, can observe my amygdala response, my reactive, my limbic response, right? So if someone insults me on the street, my emotional brain has a response. No. But the goal really is for me to find a space between my emotional brain and my thinking brain. I have to find that pause button, stop, so I can observe how I feel and then make a rational decision. Do I want to attack this woman back? How's that going to end? Do I want to fight with her in front of my children? What is that teaching
And
them?
even, do I need to? I mean, this is a maladaptive response, like a defense when we have no other choices. Okay, but then there comes a moment where you grow up in life and you have different boundaries, more elegant and better life. So how's the measure consequences? This is good. And the brain learns. Yeah, the neural pathways are physical, but you have
Right.
to work with intensidade, repetição, frequência, intensity, repetition, and frequency. What are the words that you're using?
Repetition, observation, and
Observation.
consistency. So when I'm a child, I'm living in a house, there's repetition of being criticized. I'm observing my parents criticize one another. It's consistent. I'm feeling ignored consistently, right? So it's complex PTSD. I can't escape what is happening repetitiously and consistently. And what I'm observing, it becomes my inner programming.
Yeah.
It becomes a part of me. And so now, if I was bullied as a child, I'm an adult now, and someone tries to bully me in the street, my immediate emotional response might be to defend myself and push back. I will react.
Yeah, fight response, exaggerated fight response.
Exactly, right? So because that's below the veil.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense to know why someone would respond that way. Makes sense. But what I ask people to do is observe yourself. Acknowledge that response is normal. You were bullied your whole life. And now, rather than fawn or people please or freeze, you're fighting. I get it. Now what I want you to do is notice that you notice yourself doing that. And then ask yourself, is this working for you? Because all it's doing is reinforcing the fight response. So now you become hypervigilant. Now you're looking for people to push you around. Now you're reinforcing the fight response, and it's all below the veil of consciousness.
And that goes for the other F's, because freezing and getting out of touch with people, or fawning and being, like you say in English, a people pleaser, or fly and procrastinate, which is really the fly response is one. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a scientist, I create things, write books, And sometimes to get finished with some things, too many fronts, but I just have to meditate and breathe. And sometimes I just cannot do it. And I get mad at myself that I didn't finish that thing and stuff. And it's too many things. And sometimes I have some God's sake and thanks God, loving ones, my male friend, my kids, my people that are here that say, hey, come on, rest. It's okay. You cannot do all that. So I go, yeah, rest. I have to rest as well. I have too much energy. I'm joyful. I love what I do and but sometimes I've been finding that measure of what's possible as a real person. Having raised kids on my own, 3 girls, and having had a divorce, and then one or two dysfunctional relationship that seem very nice but killed your path. You go for the flowers and the stuff. Then wow, I got this feeling good in a relationship. It's very important, and I feel grateful for being able to watch myself and every day build that. Adriana Chinen asks about trauma bond and how to overcome with it. And there was this guy that wrote in the end that was married for many years, like with a psychopath, how to rebuild trust after a toxic relationship for decades. I asked him if he was still married, and he answered me that he's divorced for 6 years now. But he lost trust in life. He lost trust in friends and everything, and in himself. He follows me. I don't know him personally. Gilberto Lopes dos Santos is a Facebook friend, but a dear one. These people that are online that are dear ones. So people ask a lot, as Sandra Guimarães did as well, what went wrong? Because you heal a little bit if they go to therapy or programs, even my own programs, and you go out happy and bouncy, but in the next relationship or even new friends, he or she can still sink over and over and over, sometimes even worse than before. What was wrong with that I had already managed to overcome and learn? Sandra Guimarães asked. So about overcoming trauma bond and the trauma of trust that dysfunctional relationships, especially with narcissists and psychopaths, live. We are learning here and talking about how to rebuild, but please, why do people fall in the same thing again and again? And it's so hard to build trust again in themselves and in relations. That's their questions.
So when it comes to dealing with the narcissist, lots of times narcissists don't know that they're narcissists. So they're very convincing. They have this false mask and they live with this illusion that they are grandiose and that you absolutely should listen to them. You should acquiesce, right? You are the wrong one. You should agree that you're the wrong one. They really do think that they are entitled to feel this way about themselves. They're very convincing. Think about the most prominent lawyer, a lawyer that can convince a jury that the defendant is actually innocent, when in fact the lawyer knows he's guilty. So a narcissist is someone who can actually convince you that you're wrong, even if you're right. And a rational, logical person is interfacing with a narcissist, and a logical person asks themselves, could I be wrong, right? Where narcissists are not self-reflective, like, am I wrong? They just think that they're right. When you're in a trauma bond situation with a narcissist, what happened is they bring you up and then they bring you down, right? So you have the flowers, you have the trip to St. Lucia, everything's awesome, right? And then they go cold. And now they're cold and they have no emotion for you and they don't want to have sex with you. They don't want to have coffee with you. They don't return your texts. They don't answer your emails. Where'd they go? And when you do start to talk to them, they start to give you subtle hints that it's your fault that they're not having sex with you. It's your fault that they're treating you this way. And you think, is this true? Is this true? Did I do something? Now they've already got you addicted to the high. So someone who's trauma bonded is always wanting to get that high again, right? And so a trauma bond is up, down, and when you're down, it's your fault. And you're chasing and you're scurrying and scurrying. And eventually the balance comes back, and maybe you have another hit where they start to be nice to you again, but you come back down again. So it's this reinforced trauma. So when it comes to understanding the narcissistic relationship and the trauma bond, but we have to get healing from a trauma bond. We have to recognize that these intermittent validation, this intermittent reinforcement of love, and then the withdrawal of love is toxic. So this roller coaster ride of a life where he loves me not, she loves me not, it's toxic. It's totally okay to have little bumps in the road in a relationship and be angry and be upset. And you talk about it. But there's always a level of respect. Maybe a partner needs to be left alone, but they'd be left there. You leave them alone, you give them their space, right? But eventually, within time,
it's not a provocation. It's not a reaction-seeking behavior to let them alone. It's just a space. You feel that there's peace whenever you do that. And about this ups and downs, the do's and don'ts with narcissists. It's important because there's something about one person that you get out of the high and lows in yourself. Otherwise, you attract and you play that game. And some women, more than men, just go after. And this reaction-seeking behavior, it's like it's a vicious, it's an addiction, and they just leave there. It's painful to leave any relationship or to, break up with a partner or business thing. But eventually you peace yourself, and this is important. But what are the do's and don'ts with narcissists? Because I have many patients, Lisa, and this seems to be growing. I don't know if it's growing in my career. Sometimes I would like to talk about something else. And they want to help the narcissist. They want to go into treatment. And as a specialist, I can help them with my heart and, take care of yourself, change the focus. It's important. I have many signs from science, neuroscience, and clinicians all over the world that they are incurable. There is no way you can help them even in therapy. I've tried to attend 4 patients, and it was a disaster. It was a complete disaster. And I am very successful helping people in my clinician for 31 years. But you just can't. They play the game with the therapist. They know better than you, and they play the game, and you begin to get sick. You as the person begin to get sick. And so I was warned about having supervision when attending them and having low expectations, and don't going into it with empathy and stuff, but it simply didn't work. Not with me. Maybe somebody knows how to do it. I didn't hear of it till the days of today. So back to the point, this do's and don'ts with narcissists and our role in being healthy ourselves, in watching our, human narcissisms that we might have, the false self of a codependent, fawning and wanting to be loved, the difference of the codependent to the narcissist, that he doesn't want the relationship, he doesn't have that connection there, he doesn't. We codependents might have the connection, but it's not working properly. So we have the connection, but we lose the sight of, okay, this is mine, this is yours. So before I go to the mommy thing, please, what are the do's and don'ts, narcissism, about all this I'm telling, and the trauma bond people experiment with these games? Well, I hope you are so impressed as I am. Just be sure you come back. There is another blog for you to watch. Lisa's information, inspiration. Just get some fresh air and come back. There is another next video. Please stay with us.